Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to our panelists. This is our new series for community conversations on COVID-19, sponsored by the City of Augusta and Maine General Health. These interactive and informational webinars are a chance for the business community and the public to collaborate, listen, and inspire new ideas. The goal of each conversation is to learn from our local businesses and support our community during this COVID-19 pandemic. During this week's webinar, we will be discussing the future of local restaurants. Our panelists include local restaurant owners Casey from Cushnoc Brewing, Geoff from Liberal Cup, and we also are joined by Steve, the Executive Director from HospitalityMaine. Thank you to the panelists for joining us and offering an inside look into your business through this COVID experience and how you have adapted. Thank you to Steve for joining us today to give us the statewide perspective of the restaurant industry as a whole. Steve, I'd like to start with you to set the stage of how things have been for the restaurant industry and how you see things looking for the future of our restaurants.
Okay, well, Katie, thank you for having me. Appreciate being here with these guys as well as everybody tuning in. So yesterday we released our study that we have been commissioned at the University of Maine to produce a projection, actually a forecast of what's going to happen at the end of this year in the hospitality industry, restaurants and hotels. It's a follow-up to a study they did for us about a year ago, which labeled the scope of the industry itself in the state of Maine. Hospitality itself is just to define it, it's restaurants or food establishments, lodging establishments, and all the businesses that support and benefit from those. So it's not the same as tourism, it's really more defined around restaurants and hotels. In Maine, last year, it's a $7 billion business with about 70,000 employees. And, you know, that last year was the 11th straight record year of growth for the industry. So we've seen a really big rise in particularly independent restaurants across the state. This year, due to the COVID, obviously, we're projecting a $1 billion loss. I say the UMaine is. By the way, that was done by economics professors, Dr. Todd Gabe and Dr. Andrew Crowley, who did the study. So it's hard data that is going to show a $1 billion loss. We reported that yesterday. Not unexpected. We've seen the decline in restaurant, particularly restaurant sales since March. Where one of the biggest factors that the report showed is that we're going to lose 27,000 jobs in the state in this industry. Now, you know, as you know, when a factory closes and, you know, maybe 100 jobs sadly are lost, often the state will send a rapid response team in and try to relocate those jobs. We're sitting in an industry that's looking at 27,000 of those things across the state. So we got a really dire situation that we have in front of us. So how is this project out going forward? Well, you know, we're slowly opening the economy. The governor made new announcement yesterday about new guidelines for restaurants, calling it phase 4. They're requiring masks across the state. As many know, while many are using masks across the state, and many restaurants are enforcing that, they didn't have to outside of the coastal communities until now. So now it's across the state. So inland areas that may have not, you know, required that of guests now will. The other factor is that they increased the amount of indoor dining, knowing that we've got colder weather coming now, and outdoor dining is less of a possibility going forward. So they've increased the size inside of restaurants up to 100 people or 50% occupancy, whichever is less. And so that's pretty important because some of the smaller restaurants may actually be able to serve less people than they are presently. The bigger restaurants that have more than 100 legal capacity, you know, we'll see their numbers rise. And some of the largest restaurants can serve up to 100, including some of the large meeting facilities that exist around the state that have capacities much larger. They can have indoor events of up to 100. So there's been some movement. We're a long way from where we need to be to get back to where we were as an industry. Everything we do has got to be done with safety in mind. Any restaurant, we know what happens when that isn't followed. Not only is it bad for the attendees and particularly our employees, but it also generates a ton of bad publicity that's going to hurt, as we've seen, any restaurant that doesn't comply. So I know most restaurateurs are very serious about this and careful, and and want to keep the public safe. So that's the landscape we're in right now, and I just sort of set the stage. And we can talk more later about what kind of winter protocols might take place to help people operate throughout the winter till we get back to next year's hopefully better COVID environment to operate in. So with that, I'll pass the baton.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. So let's kind of start into our first question. Casey, I'm going to go to you. What is one thing that might surprise people about what you've had to deal with during COVID-19 that you didn't think you would ever find yourself doing?
Being a restaurant owner, I wear a lot of hats, as does Geoff, as does anybody in the industry. But the role of guidance counselor now is a little bit more prevalent than it ever has been. In the hospitality industry, we're always putting on a brave face, and the customer is always right. And we're trying to make sure that the experience when they come into my restaurant is a very joyful one. They've chosen to come spend their money with us. I want to make sure we reward that with good service, friendly service, banter, fun with the customers. And it's tough to do that when you're having a tough day, and life is hard anyway. But right now, with the added stress of this, everybody's going through the unknown. Everybody's dealing with stuff at home. Maybe, they have a spouse that's isolating. Maybe, their kids' daycare has just shut down. So it's a lot more stress. It's a lot harder, and it's tough to kind of put a brave face on. So I think the surprise for a lot of people would be that we're going through the same stuff that they are. And, maybe their job is allowing them to work from home. Ours is not. Ours is not. And having to go out there, it's a brave thing. It's a brave thing that my staff and anybody that's working in the industry is willing to do.
Geoff, how would you answer that question?
Well, I definitely second some of the things that Casey said, because the guidance counselor factor is true. I don't know. It's because I don't know why our staff necessarily expects us to know the answers to everything, but they do look to us. I guess our kids look to us, and we're just watching Dr. Shaw as much as anyone else is, and trying to give them that answer. So it's sort of a bigger awareness we need to have as restaurant owners that we didn't before about everyone's particular lives and how things are affecting them. I'd also say one thing that's been tough, this is probably in 20 years, probably been the toughest half year I've had. Hard business grind. You're a businessman anyway as a restaurateur, but one reason why you're doing this business is because you enjoy the social aspect and the food and beverage, and there are some fun times involved, and not necessarily percent business, but I've found that the grants and the loans. I really hurt my head studying PPP. I studied that thing for 2 weeks, applying for it, wondering how to use it, strategizing. And in the meantime, that's almost been a distraction from running a restaurant. It sounds sort of odd, but just trying to navigate the CDC requirements. We're reading up on those as well, but also all the finances have really taken on an extra complexity. I'm grateful.
Geoff, you keep freezing. Is he freezing for everyone?
Grants and loans that have been available, but having to navigate those. Yeah, you froze on me too, but I'm done.
I don't know, Geoff, if you want to try to call in, and then maybe next time we could start your video, but maybe your audio would stay connected. So let's move into the second question. Casey, we'll jump back to you. Fill in the blank. If you're going to have a successful winter, it depends on 3 things. What would you say those 3 things are?
Patience from our customers and our staff. The ability to pivot. That's a kind of a cliche word right now in the in COVID times. The new normal. There's a couple of phrases that I keep hearing over and over again. But being able to pivot, figuring out what works, what doesn't work. We, right when this all went down in March, we very quickly became a pizza delivery business, which was not on my radar by any stretch of the imagination. It's not what I opened the restaurant for. It's not what I wanted to do. But we had to figure out the way we could keep the most people employed, make the most money. And that was one way we could do it. So patience from our customers as we're trying to navigate through it, it's a big deal. The ability to be able to pivot and move and stay flexible with that. And really keeping our minds open. I don't want to say no out of hand to anything at this point. You asked me earlier if I've thought about heating space outside and keeping those tables there. My answer right now is no, but very well, I may look at the financials at the end of November and say, geez, we really need to do something here. So, keeping an open mind.
Steve, I'll jump this over to you too. What do you think the 3 things would be for the restaurant industries to be successful this winter?
Well, these guys can speak to some of the things that they're implementing. I think from a larger sort of up the ladder kind of standpoint, being able to operate outdoors is realistic for some, but not very long. I think, as we said, a lot of restaurants have been outside and done fairly well with that. So new strategies and not being able to say no to anything is a key thing, because I think, from the customer's standpoint, they're adapting to things like takeout and pickup and things that, as Casey says, wasn't even in his business plan initially. Now all of a sudden it is. We're seeing with a lot of restaurants, the menus that they're offering online is different from what they were serving in the restaurant, because the interest of the customer is different. Why do they want to take this home? Well, it's not like sitting down for the restaurant experience. It's something more basic about food. Restaurants operate a different supply channel too. So some of the product available is not available in the Shaw's or Hannaford. It's a different type of food environment. So like I see Casey's dog rolling around and behind him. That's part of the Zoom world of visuals. But one thing that I'll tell you a couple things about training and the stress involved in working within restaurants. That's the thing. We developed with Eastern Maine Community College 4 COVID training courses. They're micro-credentials that we've had 4,500 frontline employees take since we launched them, about safe restaurant operations, about mental health for individuals, and how to de-escalate situations. Because you do get into situations where customers aren't necessarily patient or do not want to hear what they need to do. And that can put a lot of stress on a server who just wants to do his or her job. And so we've given tools to help them to do that. So we're going to continue that over the winter and adapt these training programs, which are free, done with the community college system to help with that. I'll leave it one other thought too, is that there is still CARES Act funding left that the state received back in April. Geoff was talking about the PPP, which has saved a lot of restaurants, no doubt. And the state has recovery money too, that many have applied for as well. But there's still more money left. And I've already submitted something to the administration about setting aside some money to subsidize the purchase of heating equipment, ventilation equipment, retooling restaurant operations to be better and safer during this long winter we have ahead of us. And I'm hopeful that the governor will do that and allow people to purchase things they need to do by subsidizing some of those costs, because that's an important factor to keep everybody safe as well.
So we'll see if Geoff is.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Do you want to try your 3 things to have a successful winter?
Sure. It sounds sort of obvious, but it's sort of almost out of our hands in some ways. We can do as much as we can, but we always had to avoid another lockdown. That just seems very obvious, but I'm more concerned about what goes on outside these walls than inside these walls. I mean, I think we've all adapted pretty well to how to do things safely and get our spacing, and people are wearing masks, and that's great. But if we have another spike like they're predicting, it doesn't really matter what we do. We're sort of doomed, be right back to where we were in March and April. So fingers crossed. Basically, I'm crossing my fingers is my number one strategy right now.
Crossing my fingers.
I think we all are, right? Everyone across the state is crossing everything we can.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many little variables. I mean, a big part of our clientele are families, and they aren't coming in so much anymore with their kids. I don't blame them. The school reopening, it's dicey right now. It's hard for people to even. A year ago on a snow day, it could be a good day for us because the parents would bring the kids in for lunch. That's not happening now. And we really need, Casey would know this better than me probably, but we really need business offices to reopen because we're not getting any business lunches. We're not getting any sales visits, sales lunches, and happy hours afterwards, because that's where the social, the social connection starts in the office a lot of times and then just ends up in the bar or the restaurant. So that's, our lunches we're doing okay, but they've taken a hit. So, I mean, it's not a really satisfactory answer. Our strategy is to continue doing what we have been doing and what has been successful in the past. We did go through, we learned about how to do to-go more than we ever wanted to. We're not really a to-go place. We've all done to-go, but all of a sudden we're 100% to-go. So we do have that. We've improved there. We are selling beer to go and growlers, which we've never done before. So that was an adjustment, a fairly easy adjustment, but we'll continue doing that. Just really hope that people can venture forward. I suppose some of the stage 4 guidelines sounds like it might hurt us a little bit on capacity, but maybe it will instill confidence in customers that there will be more space and they'll feel safer here.
Yeah. So just a quick,
that is a blow that we're going to lose capacity.
Yeah. A quick roundtable of just, facts. I wonder, Casey, what was your employee count number before COVID and kind of what is it now? How have you really been affected? I'm sure PPP helped that, but did you still lose a lot of people that maybe weren't comfortable coming into work?
Yeah, we right now, right before, I think the number that we had on our PPP loan was 56. That's a mix of full-time equivalent and part-time employees, but I think we had 56, and right now I believe we have 53. So we're comfortable right where we're at. But there were a lot of people that didn't feel comfortable. They had the ability to come to work and didn't feel safe because of health reasons for some. For others, daycare, childcare was a huge impact, and we lost a lot of moms with kids that chose to stay home with the little guys, and I can't blame them for that. And I understand. But that's right now we're basically at where we were, but there was a big dip, especially with those first couple of weeks and first couple of months. We were trying to figure out what the heck to do, and it's I can't keep an entire staff employed if I don't need them to be doing anything. The kitchen basically stayed the same, but the front of house definitely suffered.
I think that was the hardest part, because with PPP, it was the hopes to keep your staff on, but when you couldn't serve anybody inside and you were just doing takeout, that capacity wasn't needed for that many employees. So that was really hard for a lot of businesses to find things for people to do.
Right. Well, and especially, right there at the beginning, the PPP loan came, towards the end of April for a lot of people. And that's, we were 6-7 weeks into trying to negotiate what this looked like, with the hope that you get some money at the end of it to help take care of some of those costs. But yeah, basically the operating costs stayed the same, and the amount of revenue that were coming through the doors for everybody was severely jeopardized. So yeah, the PPP came at the right time at least for me. I can say that. I think Geoff would too. Yeah, the big difference there was that 6-7 week window there where we were really trying to figure out what the heck we were going to do.
So, Geoff, I'll send this question to you. Is there one thing that you have done really well or have been forced to do better to survive this business through COVID? Or maybe what's the silver lining of something you've changed and you're going to keep on after this?
Yeah, well, I guess it would be really get better to-go meals and selling beer to go. Those are two adjustments we just had to make literally the first day. And it's not as easy as it looks. When you're geared for in-house service. So I think we have gotten better at producing to-go meals. We've learned how to time it better and how to get information from customers better. And that, whereas before it was maybe a 2% of our business, it's still about 20% of our business to go. So I think people are appreciating that and using us that way. We have a lot of loyal customers who haven't come back for health reasons, really. So it's nice to be able to still provide them food and beer, and keep them as part of our community still. So that's nice. They're cleaners than we were. That there's a focus on that, extensive wiping down of everything and looking around and making sure things are sterile, really. So that, I think, there's a general awareness in society about that, but I think that's filtered into our business practices as well from our staff standpoint. So in some ways, we're probably providing a cleaner experience than ever. Not that we were ever dirty, but I think we're even cleaner.
So Casey, I'd bounce that back to you.
What's one thing that we've kind of changed that we're going to stick with?
Yeah, or what are some other things that you've had to adapt to be able to survive or continue to offer?
Just not to hit on it again, but delivery. Delivery was the big. Yeah, and as my wife chimes in from the background, and takeout at night. Our business is limited because we do all of our cooking basically in one pizza oven that only has a certain amount of square footage, so we can only cook at a certain pace. And being able to try to communicate with our customers and say, hey, it's going to be about 20 minutes or a half an hour, or at the beginning, 45 minutes to an hour for takeout. When you're ordering pizza, that's something that everybody's thinking, okay, well, you just top it, you throw it in the oven. What's the big deal? It should be quick. It's not exactly what we're doing. We're hand stretching our dough. We're topping everything. We're cooking them in an oven that's a dynamic, fire changes the temperature of that thing continuously. So it's a little bit more finesse. So yeah, the thing that we're taking away from it is that we can do takeout right now with our limited capacity. That's been okay, but that was something we couldn't do before. We had 120 people seated in the restaurant. There's no way we could accommodate takeout. Certainly not takeout and delivery. So again, delivery right now, we're doing it during the daytime, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Just come this winter, if we need to do that to make the money to keep the doors open, we'll do that too.
So Steve, I have a question for you. A couple times they've mentioned the beer to go, the mixed drinks to go. What do you see with the future of that staying for the long term?
Yeah, because that's what we do. HospitalityMaine is a trade association. We don't market the state of Maine. We do a lot of advocacy like that. My colleague, Greg Dougal, who's been doing this for many years, we're closely piped in with Bablo and some of these state agencies about things like this. Right out of the gate, we have been lobbying for first beer and wine to go, and then mixed drinks. And right now, there is no end in sight for that. We're making the point that the industry itself has fundamentally changed. I mean, these guys are talking about it. The takeout, pickup, delivery model, personally, I believe is going to remain as part of the restaurant mix going forward for the foreseeable future, because of the things they've talked about people's reticence to go back inside the restaurants. I think we know that, and it's going to go on for a while. So we're going to focus, once the legislature is back in session, we hope to put this into law, because right now it's just a regulation directive from the State Bureau of Alcohol Beverage. So I think it's going to stick. I think the model is changed too. I think that these types of things are going to be part of the overall mix in terms of all restaurants. I mentioned earlier something a little bit more inside information about these about the food channel that restaurants are in. I know a lot of restaurants are selling groceries from inside the restaurant. That's the thing too, because they're getting food from different sources, stuff that you typically can't, buy in a supermarket. I know that some of the things are like chef curated kind of meals, to go and things like that. I mean, there's one thing about restaurants, and I've been doing this job for 4.5 years, and I'll tell you, I have become so impressed by not only the resiliency of restaurant owners, but the ability to operate a restaurant, handling food and customers. These guys are talking about their support staff and how to act like guidance counselors. I mean, operating a restaurant isn't like hosting a dinner party every night. I mean, there is a lot going on. And so I think we're going to see a lot more innovation coming out of the industry. That'll be part of the rebuild going forward. And we're going to find a way to serve customers any way they want to be served. So that's the thing I see going forward, some long-term changes that are going to become part of our food culture in Maine for sure.
Perfect. So what are your plans for adding, I know the phase 4 kind of went into effect, well, it goes into effect the 14th, I believe, and it got released yesterday. Casey, you'll be able to add a couple more seating in your square footage. Geoff, you kind of mentioned it might affect you a little bit because of the separate rooms and stuff like that. Any other concerns with the winter months coming of how you guys are going to continue to operate business and keep money coming through the doors, or any other plans besides delivery and things like that?
Geoff, you want to field that one?
Sure, I'll start off a little bit there. It's funny you mentioned that today because we are literally installing heaters outside. I've been waiting for them for about 3-4 weeks, but they finally arrived. So we are going to try that, but I don't think that's going to take us too far past early November. But we'll see. I have a fairly enclosed outdoor area, so we're going to have some radiant heaters from above and see how that works. But especially with this reduced capacity inside, I've got to find another way to get more tables out there. Like Casey said before, our operating costs are essentially the same. So you got to, no matter how many people come through the door in a given day, we still have to have a certain amount of cooks and servers and a dishwasher and things like that. So revenue is going to be the name of the game, how to scratch out some revenue. Definitely in survival mode, I would say. I don't look to make much profit this year, if any. I just want to sort of be on the other side of this. It's really difficult, though, knowing when the other side is. And you need a certain amount of certainty as a businessman. As a restaurateur, you expect every day to be different. But you do need to have some ability to long-range forecast and anticipate the seasons. And there's a normal rhythm that you adapt to and you expect. And that's been thrown out the window because we are, one COVID spike away from being locked down and all your plans go to hell. One thing I think I'm going to be doing is keeping my inventory less this winter. It was a shock last March. We shut down and have literally thousands of dollars of food and tens of thousands of dollars of beer just sitting here. What do we do? It was tempting just to throw away the towel and say, we're done for a while here, but I'm glad we didn't because you had to move that inventory. And then slowly we added to it, but it was almost a week-to-week approach rather than a season-to-season approach. And I think we'll be cautious going forward. Hope people are understanding. If we're out of something on a particular day, it's probably because we didn't overorder. And people are a little more understanding now, maybe, of our trials and tribulations than they were before COVID. There's a certain amount of forgiveness and understanding that, because I think everyone's experienced some kind of drought somewhere in their refrigerator at home from not being able to get certain items. Or even this whole heater thing has been a pain. And it's COVID related. The manufacturers were downsized. They couldn't produce the heaters fast enough. There's extra demand. I think there's been some programs on Maine News about how a lot of Maine restaurants are having trouble sourcing heaters. So I keep on telling people they're coming. It's COVID. That's become our standard excuse for everything. It's COVID.
Yeah, I wish we all. Casey, would you like to answer that question?
Well, tell me the question again, I guess. I'm along for the ride. What was it specifically?
So kind of how you're able to increase capacity inside, but anything else that you guys are planning to do for the winter months, or anything you're thinking outside the box of your plans for the future?
Really, it's going to be, takeout and delivery is really the only thing that we can do if we can't get more than 60 people into our business at any given time. That's frightening. So takeout and delivery, which we've become a lot better at. will certainly be the name of the game, and that's what our plan is right now. But it's challenging because we don't have a crystal ball. Like Geoff said, it's week to week or month to month at the beginning, and moving forward here, it might be day to day, and having to change on the fly. And I may be having a tough day, and I need some of my my team to build me up one day, which has happened. So yeah, takeout and delivery is for the foreseeable future what we're going to be doing to help keep the dollars coming through the door. It's certainly not the reason that I got into the industry. I like the face-to-face interaction. I like going over to a table and talking to them about their experience. And like Geoff said, you have some very loyal customers. They become your friends. I know I'm gonna see you and Chris in the restaurant, and I miss having that with a lot of customers. So hopefully it's not the long range plan. To Steve's point, some part of this is going to stay. But I'd love to be able to get back to that as quickly as we can. So being safe, making sure that we don't, add to the possibility of a lockdown. Just really doing what we can.
So Steve, a question for you was that a huge concern with a lot of the industry was the manufacturing and distribution of supplies that were so low, and people not being able to get stuff. Any insight on that kind of stuff?
Well, a lot of that stuff's been alleviated early on, getting masks, getting takeout materials, all that kind of stuff that had people to ramp up with. It was really hard. And we focused a lot of our attention on that back in March, April, and May, into June maybe. Some of that stress has relieved itself a little bit. Same thing with the food pipeline and all that. So one thing that, two things that these guys have mentioned that I just quick comment on. One was the idea that people got to go back into their offices, which would really help, particularly the lunch business in places like Augusta and Portland, and any center of commerce. Augusta's like a desert a lot of these days. The parking lots where I work are empty every day. So there's all that isn't happening. So that's a real problem. Geoff was mentioning the cost and the availability of heating equipment, or things like ventilation and stuff like that. That's what we're working on now, is trying to be able to source some of these things that we're going to need over the winter for the industry. And I mentioned earlier about trying to get the state to help us with that and subsidies. So we're working hard on that because longer term, not just through the winter, but longer term, many people have to retool their operation to improve the airflow and we're not talking hotels today, but in terms of cleaning and disinfecting, and which involves restaurants too. But all these things in terms of long-term systems, not just bottles of spray disinfectant, but actually retooling for the future around better systems for moving air. And because if you listen to Dr. Shah and others, they often talk about the airflow and the ability, that's one of the causes for interior spread. And so we've got to find ways to address that, because the public, even with vaccines, are still going to be looking at this and factoring into where they go. And they're going to want to go to places they feel comfortable and safe at. I personally myself have walked out of restaurant, gone in, looked at the place and left, just because I know that. But I've also gone to a lot of places and I look at the protocol because I helped write them. And I'm like, they're doing things exactly the way they should. And I often tell the people, excellent job, and try to boost people's spirits, because it's tough. It's as we've been talking about, this is a people business. And we restaurants historically have been places people gather socially and business wise and celebrate events and things like that. And it's all evaporated right now. So I'm optimistic that we're going to get back to that. It's going to be, as I said earlier, a mix of things that are going to happen. So that's our hope. I think over the winter, we're going to find a lot of people really assessing how they operate and, hopefully looking differently, perhaps, as we go forward in the future.
So before we get into questions from our attendees, I'd like to just do a quick roundtable of everybody. Just from your guys' perspective, what is one way the public can help support you this winter? to make sure you guys can succeed? Or what is one thing you would love for the community to know from behind the scenes from you guys? So Casey, if you want to start off with that.
One of the things that I'd like for them to know is how much we appreciate their loyalty, especially when we first started, when the shutdown happened there in the middle of March. I had to install a second phone line because literally we were getting messages on Facebook saying, you know, your phone lines are down. I've been calling for 4 hours. I can't get through. And I think a lot of people didn't believe us when we said, really? No, we hang up the phone, it's ringing again, we do it. And we had customers say, you know, hey, this is the 73rd time I called you. I finally got through. I mean, wow. I mean, Greg, you can eat anything. The fact that you're putting that much effort into it, I hate being on the phone. So the fact that somebody's putting in that much effort to try to support us, we're just eternally thankful. It's an incredible outpouring of support from the community that means a lot to me and my staff.
Geoff?
Yeah, well, I'd say the most obvious thing to help us is to come in, trust us, have a good meal again. Someone told me this stat that it takes 3 months to break a habit and 3 months to form a habit. So I'm a little concerned that people are getting out of the habit of coming out to eat. And I think, you start wearing your PJs too long and watching Netflix, and it get harder and harder to get out of your house, especially in the wintertime. And but I have noticed that when people, and I've gone through this with some good customers, just like Casey, where there's a bit of a reluctance. I run into them out in the street, and I'll say, well, why don't you come in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when it's slow? It's going to be very uncrowded. See how it feels. Maybe you can sit outside. And they'll come in, they'll bring their wife and their husband, and they have a good time. And then they'll come back a little bit more often. They'll tell friends it's okay. So I think it's just reaching a certain comfort level that gets some of the fear out of their minds. I mean, it's good to be afraid because it's a real thing, I believe. But we're fortunate in this area not to have community transmission, and we are really doing everything we can to make it safe. So I would just encourage people to come in, give us a shot, come in on the off hours if you don't want it to be too crowded. And if it goes well, tell your friends, because we're all neighbors in this neck of the woods, and what's good for us is good for them and good for everyone. So as a community, we sort of have to stay strong, like the banners say, and support each other. And so I think it sounds simple, but that's pretty effective. And some people who aren't comfortable yet have done great by buying gift cards, which obviously we can use a cash infusion, and they'll say that they'll use it later, or they'll give it out as gifts. But that's appreciated too. That's the holiday season coming up. Maybe buy some gift cards for us.
It's a good point there. And take out. Steve, would you like to add anything in on that side?
I'm not sure I can add anything better than those guys both just said it. I mean, that was both well said. I mean, support of the industry, recognition of the challenges we face, and the fact that we're really trying to do a good job, and hopefully they'll be confident that we are. So I wouldn't add any more than that.
And I would say too, I mean, Casey and Geoff, you guys have been great at adapting for anything. If anybody reached out and was uncomfortable, I'm sure that you guys would make it happen and make it work. Deliver to their house, deliver right out to their car. You would do anything you could to keep those customers happy and safe. So I think great job to you guys for continuing offering some great food in Kennebec Valley. I'd like to turn it over to questions. Anybody who's attending today who has questions, feel free to put them in the chat box for anybody. So it could be Casey, Geoff, it could be, you could have them all answer it and all give their point of view, or Steve as the statewide perspective. One question, Geoff, that we did have is, would you be interested in offering breakfast at all?
Boy, that would be a whole different world. That's a whole different skill set. And I got to say, sometimes my favorite hours here are from 7 to 11 before we open.
Quiet.
Quiet. We are open 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. I mean, a couple days off, but in the mornings when we have to get things done without customers around, repairs essentially, and cleaning, of course. So I would be reluctant to do that. I think breakfast, I can leave that to the breakfast experts. I That really, there aren't too many places that can pull off all 3 meals. I can't really think of any that put great.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, but I appreciate. I mean, we're doing a Sunday brunch just to promote myself. Good omelets and good brunch meals, but it is interesting how not all our cooks can do that. It really is a different cooking experience altogether. How to cook eggs.
Yep. Any other questions? I don't see any that came through, so I think you guys have covered good points of views from your guys' side of the industry, and I think it opens up a lot more awareness for the community and the customers to just patience, I would say, is key. You know, we're all getting through this together. We're all human. I'd like to thank you all again for taking the time today to have these conversations. This is recorded, so it will be up on our website. It will also be up on the City of Augusta's website if you'd like to share this information out with anybody. And with that, I mean, still no questions have come through, so I guess you guys really covered everything.
Two very eloquent guys.
There you go. Any final remarks from anybody that would like to say anything? The floor is open if anybody would like to say anything else.
Muted somehow. There you
Yeah.
go.
There you go.
Steve, can I ask you a question sort of directly here?
Sure.
While I have you, I was just thinking while you were talking about increasing airflow and you know, improving situations and maybe getting the state to help subsidize that. I wonder, has it ever come up that if we can prove that we've taken certain actions and sort of get our air quality tested, if we could increase capacity, because that'd be a way that we could almost subsidize ourselves.
Wow. Yeah, excellent question. That has not come up in any discussions I've had with the administration on that. You know, they have a limited ability to actually go into every restaurant and test for those things. I'm going to make a note of that, though, because I believe that the whole idea of ventilation and airflow is going to be a factor going forward. And I'll add that into the mix. So that's a good question, Geoff. Haven't come up yet.
Thank you.
You know, I mean, like I said, there are millions still that have to be spent by the end of the year from the CARES Act money. It has to be spent, or the government claws it back, goes back to Washington, D.C. So I'm hopeful we can get some money. I'd love Maine to lead the way in safe restaurant operations, and we all are struggling just to keep the doors open. So we need some help. So we'll see if we can get that. Good point.
Yeah, because especially with ventilation, once it gets colder, it's going to be hard to have windows open and doors open.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, perfect. Well, thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you for our panelists. Thank you to the City of Augusta and Maine General Health for sponsoring our series. Next week, we will be having our series focused on retail and how, you know, the winter months are going to affect retail in this next upcoming shopping season. So please join us in for next week, and we will have multiple webinars throughout the series. So please let us know if there is something else that you guys would like us to cover in these community conversations. I think it's really important for the businesses to hear from the community, and likewise to really start good conversations of what we all need to do here. So I hope you guys all have a great day, and thank you for joining us, and see you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, sir.
Bye now.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.